The REB Business Empowerment Showcase, shining a spotlight on the most innovative businesses that are helping principals, agents and property managers get ahead in their marketplace.
Well, g'day everyone, it's Liam Garman here, Managing Editor of Real Estate here at Momentum Media, the team that brings you real estate business and the REB Business Empowerment Showcase. And I'm joined today by a man who needs no introduction, Vinay Singh, Head of Revenue at CampaignAgent, bringing 20 years of real estate industry experience, sales agent, auctioneer, principal. Mate, what haven't you done?
I've done it all. I've had a really good 20 plus years in the industry, and I love this industry, and I don't think I'll be going anywhere soon.
Yeah.
So we could be sitting here in 30 years' time.
Yeah, I love that. I love the optimism. It's so good, especially with obviously the market has been not many downs, but a lot of skepticism about where 13 interest rates would go, totally. Whether it's a federal election. So a lot of people have been watching it closely, but there is still that optimism, especially that you're bringing to the table now. I love when I've got guests here in the studio. I love getting a little bit of insight into their career to date.
Sure.
You're now head of revenue at CampaignAgent. Yep. What brought you there? And what are you doing at the moment at CampaignAgent?
Yeah, right. Can I just go back to another point? When I started real estate, understandably the prices, comparably are very different to today. Interest rates were 17%. We all survived. I just thought I'd note that out. That yes, we've got interest rate rises that have happened over the couple of decades, but we started at a very high point. Which brings me to when I first started real estate. I did start real estate in '98. I had just finished school. I did a proper 3 to 4 years of sales assistant work, and in the 90s that meant phone prospecting, door knocking, taking your boss's car for a wash, buying his girlfriend's gifts. I did it properly,
and the wives too. I'm guessing.
The wives as well. I did it properly. So I did three to 4 years of fairly intense sales assistant work, which means you don't leave until you get your 10 appraisals. You don't have a chair if you don't do it properly the next day, and all that sort of stuff. So I started selling real estate in 2002, and then I just never stopped. Actually, I sold real estate as a sales agent, and then into a sales director. I then had a couple of offices, and I ended up at an Elger Hooker office in Woodcroft. And most of my career was in the western suburbs of Sydney, where we saw prices go from 100,000 and now to well over $1 million. And I was thinking about this morning, and I thought when we used to phone prospect, you'd have vendors say, "Well, give me $1 million and I'll sell."
No, well, there you go. Yeah.
And now you're like, sure, I'll do that today. Yeah. So the market certainly shifted, and through my career, I then sort of sold up my hookers business, and was looking for a change. And I thought, hey, you know what? I love the industry, but I'm happy to take a bit of a step back. Moved into a corporate role with a leading property management CRM provider, and really enjoyed my time there. Then found CampaignAgent, and I realized that one of the things that were affecting my business, and it seems a bit corny, but it's true. One of the things that affected my business the most was marketing spend. And as it increased up, I found that not only were my profits going and my cash flow was running out, my month to month was becoming really, really hard.
And this is you in the shoes of Vinay, the real estate
agent.
Yeah,
me as the director of a business with 6 sales staff and admin staff and a property management team, and I had a business partner. But every month we would get to the end and go, we've spent so much money on marketing, and you've got a vendor that you really want to put on the market, but they've been promised advanced marketing spend from somebody else. Your average goes from $1,500 to $3,000. In the living room, you have a choice: take the listing, don't take the listing. Our sales guys are going to take it, but then we at that point have to wear the cost.
That's typical sales, isn't it?
Typical sales.
You'll deliver later. You'll find a way.
We'll find a way.
Yeah.
And if that property withdraws, oh god, that's a problem. Or if it delays settlement, but you got 30 days, 90-day accounts. And then so CampaignAgent came up in my world, and I realized that this is the business that I should have had when I had the real estate business, because it would have saved me a heap of pain. And this fits really well with what I believe in, and what I think will help agencies and agents. Before me being a principal, I was an agent that used to pay for my own marketing if I didn't get it. This would have been very helpful for me as well. joined CampaignAgent in Sydney, and as time went on, I moved on as well, and I moved up, and I moved into an operations role about 2 years ago, and then took the head of revenue role.
Big job.
Big job.
Mm.
That is, sales and success and integrations, and we started from, that time that no one likes to talk about, COVID.
Mm.
And from there we've certainly seen some really good increase in all growth areas, from revenue funding to numbers of agents that have come on board. So we've seen some really good growth in the last 3 to 4 years. We've seen amazing growth since the business started. But I think that where we've really hit straps was probably about 3 or 4 years ago.
Now, I think a good place to start in our conversation about CampaignAgent is you identified a few points throughout your career where you're like, oh, I wish I had this, right?
Yeah.
And that was primarily on the marketing end. CampaignAgent does a lot of things. Do you want to give us a quick snapshot of your offerings and how it helps agents?
So I think the main thing is that it's the empowerment that it gives to a vendor, but protecting the agency. So, as I said, you've got a marketing campaign and a property, could average 5,000 or 10,000, depending on your area, depending on the type of marketing that you do. Before a product like this, you would get to the middle of the listing and say, right, my fee is X and your marketing is going to be X. The vendor has to make a decision on, are they going to pay for funding? Are they going to try and negotiate with the agency or agent? Again, at that time, you've only got 2 choices as the agent. Take it, don't take it. So what this allows the vendor to do is say, like, hey, listen, we do want this marketing campaign. We're happy to pay for it on settlement or withdrawn, whichever comes first. And you know what? We're actually going to take a campaign that we wouldn't have taken before because we don't have to pay for it now. So that's where the empowerment part comes in. So there's, 3 variations to that marketing schedule. I'd really like to take C, but if I have to pay it for it up front, I don't have that cash right now. But because I don't have to, I'll take C, and I'm hoping, and from the expertise of the agent saying, hey, listen, you'll have a bigger buyer pool, and chances are you're going to get a better sale price, and you're going to get sold quicker. That makes good sense.
It does.
So that's the process. The part of where we supply those funds goes to the agent, and we've got a product that goes to the vendor for different reasons, allowing everybody to have the lowest financial risk possible at the time of listing to sale. Doesn't mean you don't have to pay it, you do, but it just gives them, especially when you're transitioning from house to house, it's about 10,000. Then you add on the marketing on top of that, your conveyancing, your solicitor fees, any cosmetic upgrades, which we cover as well.
It sums up quick.
It's really quick.
Yeah.
You can go from 2 to 20, 2 to 40 really, really quickly. We haven't even talked about the deposit for the next property,
Of course.
and then getting the next property up. So it becomes very, very expensive, and it becomes very frustrating. And for an agency, for a vendor, it can get quite scary.
It does. I mean, you look at these bills come through, and then someone's like, oh, and don't forget this, and don't forget that. And you're like, oh my gosh, do I have enough money in the kitty to even do this?
And so in most cases, I don't know if that is the case now. We haven't surveyed for a while, but there was a long time where a vendor didn't actually realize they had all these expenses at the time. We're going to sell our house. And then you're like, well, that's great, but it's going to cost you X. And did you know you have to pay for that now? Otherwise, nothing's going to proceed forward. And then you have 4 or 5 agents tell you exactly the same thing, and there's nowhere to go because you want to sell, you want to buy, or you have to sell, but you can't. And if you do, you may lose out on one of your biggest assets in your lifetime because you didn't quite have the marketing money to get it in front of thousands of buyers or whatever that looks like in your market. But that's sort of what CampaignAgent does for a vendor. For an agency, and I'll try not to get too geeky with the maths.
Oh, I love it, please.
But generally speaking, an agency that's listing about 10 listings a month can be, let's call it upside down or tied up in cash flow for about $250,000 every quarter. Because they've got it out. Getting it back is 12-week cycles in most cases. So they're holding that much cash. Most agencies don't realize. They just genuinely don't, because there's money in, money out. And every
At
month
such a high frequency, it just
such a high
clears through,
frequency. So as
yeah.
long as you're paying your rent or your mortgage and you got your wages and your commissions and everyone's happy, but every month, every quarter that goes by, you've got money tied up in marketing or you've got money tied up in commissions or settlements. The bigger the agency is, the larger that number gets, obviously. For a smaller agency, sure, they're not doing 10, they're doing 5, but that is still a lot of cash flow that's been tied up. And all because they didn't have a provider that said, hey, listen, we'll cover that for you. We'll cover it. You do what you do best and we'll cover you. And all of a sudden their risk goes down. They have happier staff because they can do more with each listing, and happier vendors. Because the vendors, they don't feel like they're under pressure now.
Would you consider yourself fintech? Is that the area you'd classify yourself?
Yeah. So we'd be more fintech than proptech.
Yep. But I mean, it's still enabling. It's still enabling the growth, which is the kind of the Venn diagram of proptech as well, because you're enabling that growth.
Definitely.
I do have a question because, and I completely agree with everything you're saying. One thumb on the pulse, one thing that a lot of agents tell me is that given the clearance rates at the moment and everyone I just search it on RIA or Domain and houses pop up and then I do my own research. A lot of agents are telling me like it is getting harder to convince people that they actually do need a marketing campaign to be visible. Is this something that you're seeing?
No.
You're not?
Definitely not.
No.
Well, I mean, and I say that because I look at numbers daily. As part of my job as head of revenue, I make sure that everything's going smoothly well. And we can see that campaigns today compared to 12 months ago, in advertising is actually increasing, not decreasing. And we're seeing that it's consumer driven, right? So we're saying, hey, listen, your marketing campaign or your schedule might be X. But the vendor is still saying, hey, we want more eyes to see my property. Yeah. We want you to have more inquiries. We want to see more people at the open house. We want to see more people at the auction. So I don't believe so because we've got our utilization rate continuously increases. So I think if that was fact nationally and by state, we still have increases by state by a number of points every month. So I don't think that's factual across the board.
And actually that makes a lot of sense because there would be some people that say, the market's so hot right now, I don't really need to have a campaign. But then on the flip side, people would say, hey, the market's so hot right now, I want a super campaign to really maximize and draw the most from it.
That's absolutely it.
Yeah.
People, I mean, we've got off, so it's not that there isn't off market. There is off market. And yes, they still come through to CampaignAgent to do cosmetic work or, just to get the property ready for sale. But the large majority of our properties are on market through advertising campaigns, through smart advertising market campaigns with an overlay of some social media or obviously you've also got your signboards and your drones. But as far as portals go, we don't see a drop off.
Interesting. Yeah. Now, we are sitting at a very interesting time in Australia's property market. What vendor behaviours are you seeing change in the market at the moment?
Yeah, I think vendors, and I've said this before, but I think vendors and buyers are increasingly smarter than what we might have been before.
Right.
And I think the idea is we used to say, hey, listen, a house up the road sold for X. And that's where you get your price, or that's where our vendors will get our pricing. The house up the road sold for X. But when I am speaking to people in my personal life and professionally, they're seeing it at a much larger scale. They're saying a property in my state, in my country, overseas is happening. And for that reason, I believe it determines X. The immigration is increasing. I believe my property price is X. So I don't think that we're looking at it so locally anymore. And I think that it's also driving consumer behavior in all parts of the real estate process. So they're looking at tech. They're looking at, hey, it is unacceptable for us to not have a Zoom meeting at least once a week. Because they're doing it at work.
It's simpler. Yeah.
And they're used to it in their environments, right? And I'm not saying everybody, generally speaking though, but what I'm seeing is the economics of how my property is going to sell what I need to put in to get a net result and how quick it's going to be is determined by how tech savvy or how digitally in front the agency is.
Yeah. So would you, and maybe this is going a little bit out of the scope of this podcast, or maybe it's even a podcast in and of itself.
Sure.
Would that mean potentially that you've got a lot of these old school agents that have been fantastic in their trade for years, but because of those things, and I think the Zoom example is fantastic because those barriers to communication have just been completely eroded. Whereas you'd have to schedule in a 15-minute meeting, the agent comes past, well, now can be done notionally immediately. So those barriers are gone. Are we seeing maybe those old school agents maybe take a step back and then that new era of tech savvy agent come through?
I think, and it depends on, I mean, this is a huge generalization, but I think that through my time in real estate as a real estate agent and then in the tech world, in both my roles, I think adoption at the older school, let's call it that, the more prestige agency.
Prestige, we'll go with that.
I think adoption is high.
Yeah.
I do. I know that there's always going to be, a cohort that says, no, I'm not going to change. I'm going to do what I've been doing for 30 years and I'm not going to change that. But I think that there's another cohort within that says, tell me what I need to do because I'm not going to be left behind.
Adapt or die.
But just slow it down for me and I'll pick it up. I think that is heavily dependent on the office. I think it's heavily dependent on the network. And I think it's heavily dependent on the area that they work in. I think that there are still suburbs across the country that they don't really need to. So they might have to adapt a little bit, but not at full scale like if you were in, Sydney.
Yeah, and that makes sense. If you're in a one office town, well, you're good to go. You're good to go.
Yeah.
But if you're
there was a time where in my career where 7 agents would sit around for lunch, 7 sales directors, 7 principals, and we'd kind of have a, hey, what's fair play conversation? What's fair play in the market?
Oh, with your competitors.
Yeah, with your competitors, right? I
mean, your frenemies.
Your frenemies.
Yeah.
When you're in the living room, sure, you're my friend.
Yeah.
But at lunch, you might say, hey, listen, fair play, 2%? What is it? What's the going rate now?
Yeah.
And you might have that conversation. And in that conversation, you might say, hey, listen, we're going to move to a tech stack. We're going to look at this. Just letting you know. You may do that.
Yep.
Or you know them so well that, I better keep up because I'm going to be left behind. So I don't totally agree with the fact that some of our more prestige agencies are going to say, more seasoned agents are going to say, I'm not going to adapt. But it's a matter of how we encourage that behavior. You kind of want them to.
Yeah.
You don't want them to be left behind, especially if they had a 3-decade career. But it's up to them. But I think that as we see technology being built out, that it's becoming so much more easy to understand and use. And it used to be so complex. I think that's making it easier to adapt.
Oh yeah, for sure. Back in the day where you'd go to like Officeworks and you'd buy the CD-ROM kind of packs and you'd upload it and you'd have to read the manual and what the hell is this? What am I doing? You have to call someone to help you. That's all gone.
It's gone.
And I would hazard a guess that if you are so successful and if your office is so successful in its trade, you've had to be innovative to get there and you've had to be a market leader.
Yep.
Looking at CampaignAgent, are you seeing that vendors are also becoming more open to flexible finance as time goes on?
They certainly are. And I think that it's no longer, it's a nice to have. I think it's a benchmark. I think you need to have this option or an option for vendors to decide what they're going to use, not a matter of not having it and making the vendor decide what are they going to go get a second mortgage or are they going to use their credit card. I think it has to be an in-house solution for the agency. I think it has to be a solution that it can be trusted. But I don't believe it's now a nice to have. I think it's a benchmark. Need to have it.
Yeah.
And we're seeing that. We know we started. We used to call it the education timeline for us when we used to educate agencies on why this is important. And now we're no longer educating. It's now a matter of alignment and suitability.
So how does your partnership model work exactly? Are you in collaboration with networks and agencies and then they say, you could, I don't know, if we look at the cosmetics, you could use a little bit of a spruce up.
Sure.
you can speak to CampaignAgent. Is that how you get those leads? It's through the agent led?
Well, again, we're regulated with a credit license, so the agent will recommend that, hey, we've got your marketing is X and you want to do some preparation. Have a chat to CampaignAgent. They might be able to help you.
Yes.
Now we've got a portal that the vendor can go onto. They can do their application. It's seamless. Like, it's a really easy portal. And they do the whole process with CampaignAgent. The agency, is a distributor. Certainly not. Their role is not to sell the product. It's to make sure that they know that the vendor knows it's available to them.
With all of this as well, underpinning it, and it's an area of particular interest of mine. It's creating the campaign as well. Have you seen attitudes to marketing spend change, and the ways in which people are marketing change as well?
From an agency's perspective?
Vendor and agent.
Sure. I think, 20 years ago, we used to have the Homes Pictorial. We used to have 24 boxes, and you used to put your house in 4 bullet points, something like that. And as we evolve in time, we know that was never going to be sustainable. So I think that as much as we love advertising and wide net pool for buyers to be able to come and look at a property, which increases property prices, quite possibly, I think that the general consensus is, if it didn't change, it would have been okay. But now that it's here, let's love it. And let's use it to our advantage, because we're not just selling properties. We're selling brand. We're selling agent. We're selling agency. We're selling repeat business. So the idea of using marketing just to sell a home, is great from a vendor perspective, but that's not the reality of the world. The reality of the world is it does so many more things.
We were discussing just before the podcast started, and I should have asked you then, but I'm going to ask you now while we're on the airwaves. You said it's a white labeled product.
Yeah.
How does that work?
So for our Pay Now product, if the vendor journey is, if they're using our Pay Now, not our Pay Later, it's a white label branded by the agent. As soon as it moves over to, hey, we want to use CampaignAgent for Pay Later, it then moves over back to CampaignAgent branding to make it very clear that it's a CampaignAgent third-party offering. Whereas the Pay Now option is 12 options of payment direct. So there's no delay. It's just a matter of getting it from vendor to us securely. And the most important part is securely. So we reduce our fraud. We make sure that the agency is protected.
I was looking at that because when I was on your website earlier, and this is a good thing.
Sure.
I know this is a good thing. Your scam alerts
Yes.
on your website, and I think that's something. It's something quite close to our hearts here at REB, because you see it so often that people lose literally a lifetime of work.
Yep.
And it was only about a year and a half ago or 2 years ago where someone pretended that they were a conveyancer, and the email address of this scam was the exact same as the email address of the conveyancer, bar like one letter.
Yep.
The email signature was the same. The body of the copy. It's no longer like Nigerian
You
Prince
could never
level.
tell.
You couldn't tell,
No.
right? It's not Nigerian Prince level. This is perfectly written, probably through ChatGPT. And so I took it with great confidence that on your website you're not even. It's not a reactive thing that you're doing. You're proactively talking to mums and dads out there and agents that are speaking to families that, hey, be careful of this. This is a major, major thing that we're facing as an entire country.
Yeah, and keeping in mind that there's really no financial benefit for us for Pay Now. It is the service that we provide to agencies or to vendors via agencies to make sure that there is protection there. And also from the perspective of an admin workflow, it reduces the amount of remittance they have to do, because it comes straight into the account with the reference number, so they know exactly how to allocate that. So it's great for them to reconcile. But fraud and risk is huge. That's huge for us. And we keep an eye on that.
What would you say to agents and principals that are listening to this? Because this has been quite a forward-thinking podcast.
Sure.
I think it's a lot of agents that come on here. We talk about top tips and everything, but a lot of this has been looking into the future. What would you say to agents or principals? What should they prioritize now to stay ahead for 2026?
You think you'd say AI.
You'd think, but it seems like every conference I go to, there's more stuff on AI.
Yeah, right. So, I mean, I love AI. We've been using it in our business since 21.
In what way? In what form?
Well, we've incorporated it for automation.
Yeah.
We run our KB articles through it. We most likely have a chatbot that will use those things. So AI is heavy in Campaign Agent, and we're very considered when we're using it. And I don't know if you've met Seth, it's our AI guy and our co-founder of Campaign Agent. He's big in the AI scene, and we talk a lot about one-to-one how would an agency use AI, and I think there's so many ways that they can use AI. I think they can use it from tracking and tracing, from prospecting to writing your ads, and I think there's so many things you can do with it. But there's a human element there that you think you still need.
For sure.
And I don't know if it's, I think AI is a great tool. I think it will always be there. I don't think it's going to go away. I think our tech partners and tech suppliers are incorporating that on behalf of the agent. So I think they're probably already using it and probably more advanced than what they think they are, because it's in there. It's embedded in everyone's day now. But I still believe that we need to continue our training, and I think we still need to continue our understanding of market. I think we still need to understand how property finance works. So I think the fundamentals of real estate, we still need to learn those things.
Yeah.
And I don't know and I know we've had, this is very controversial.
I love it. Yeah.
I know that we've had a lot of regulatory changing in regards to what does CPD look like and what do you have to do to get your license and your certificate. I think we've still got a while to go.
On the AI, and actually that ties in almost, well, while you say that ties into what you were saying right at the beginning of the podcast, where your trade apprenticeship, I guess is a good way of putting it, your traineeship, 3 years, 4 years. And you would have had to have done a fair bit of study.
I did it the old school way. I did a 12-month traineeship at TAFE.
Yeah.
So I didn't do I think at one point you could do a 7-day certificate. I think it was something like that.
It's a few days.
Yeah, no, I did it. And not that I'm saying my way was the best way, but it certainly was the longest way to get there.
But within that, nested within that is that what you would have learned over 12 months was quite in depth. The regulation, the compliance, the rules, which no matter how smart you are, even if you're one of those guys that skims a book and knows the whole thing, you can't do that in 7 days.
Can't do it in 7 days. And in 12 months, you do learn a couple of things. You learn a lot of things, but you learn the trade. You also learn how hard it is.
Yeah. Which a lot of people definitely don't get nowadays.
Because you're like, I'm just going to get my license and I'm going to go make
print money.
$50.
Yeah.
You're not.
Yeah.
You're not going to do that.
Yeah.
And I think you also learnt the fundamentals of how an office works. Because we're, a lot of the times we're young when we want to get into real estate, and yes, it's it could be a mum and dad business, and I get that as well. But there is something about going to school and then working at a real job, and then on top of that, you're selling now $1 million+ worth of asset.
Yes,
and even if you're not selling it, you're part of the process. You're talking to a vendor, you're talking to a buyer. Do you understand the fundamentals of how economics works to be able to tell someone who's earned enough to buy $1 million property or $1.5 million property as a minimum on how to buy this property?
Yeah. The economic fundamentals, also the human interaction element of delivering it. Yeah. One thing that I always go back to is email writing and the way that you communicate with people. Totally. And I would say this, every principal out there, and I'm sorry because I'm about to get a lot of 21-year-olds in a lot of hot water, but if you're not doing it, always look at the way that your 21, 22, 23-year-old staff are communicating via email, because I think you'd be shocked sometimes.
I agree.
It's not their fault because it takes years to learn it. I remember when I was starting my career and when you had to deliver bad news and you'd be a little bit ambiguous.
Yep.
So,
you
kind of
I don't want to say the words.
You dance around it, right? You dance around it. But what happens when you're too ambiguous?
Right.
There's miscommunication. No one's on the same thought pattern, and it gets worse.
Yep.
Going back to AI, the best way of doing it, I think, and you've already highlighted this, is AI is empowerment, but you still need someone to empower.
Correct.
So there are so many examples where AI has been used wrong. You had the case maybe a year and a half ago, 2 years ago, where lawyers went to court with fake cases because they relied on ChatGPT. If you don't have the economic fundamentals, like you said, if you don't have the human interaction, if you don't know your trade, you can use AI as much as you want, but you actually create the risk of
Correct.
it being real bad.
I think if you want a reminder, just go to the bottom of your chat and just reread that line where it says chat can be wrong.
Yeah.
Just as a reminder
Yeah.
that it can be wrong and it will lie to you. And depending on how you want it to respond is generally how you'll get your response. And I think you and I were talking about this, that, there could be a thought that, hey, AI is chat. That's what AI is. Sure, it is. But there's so much.
It's deeper.
It's so much deeper. It's so much more embedded that you're not, how you want to use it as a tool and as a guide. I think it's safe. But when you're using it as source of truth and that's the only source of truth, then maybe you should check.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, you guys have a very big year ahead of you. What's your priorities for 2026?
Well, we've got a huge roadmap. We really do, but we're not looking at roadmap as shiny tools. We're looking at agency services as a whole office solutions, and
Yet to be unveiled.
And we'll bring some products that'll be a really nice fit to our product suite, but we'll give a full service to an agency and to a network. We're spending a lot of time in risk and compliance. Lots of time, actually. We're going deep into risk and compliance. We're making sure that we're able to deliver risk and compliance obligations to the agency where we need to.
Would that cover AML?
Yeah.
Yeah, see, that's one big thing. And, I've been speaking to, and there's a lot of people behind the eight ball on this, really dangerously behind. When I talk to AML to just some agents around the trap, like, what's that? It's like, mate, you better look because you've got about 13 months to go.
Get it sorted out. So I think that I think it's something that agencies need to not think. They need to start thinking about it now.
Yeah, for sure.
Because it's going to change the way you do business. It may slow it down if you don't have the right processes in place. Sure, CampaignAgent is thinking about that on behalf of the agencies and thinking about a lot of things, in that world of risk and compliance and what's required, and how we can make that easier for them. But as an agency or as an agency service, it's something that as an individual I think about as well. How can we incorporate this? Where do we see the priority and where's the timeline for us? Because it's all good that it's due, next year, but it might take you 6 months to get used to the process. So I think the idea is that we need to start thinking about this fairly soon now.
For sure. I think I was talking to Tim McKibben from REI NSW on a podcast just a few weeks ago, and he said, for some of your larger offices, you might have to have someone full time on compliance. That's massive.
We're hearing the same thing. So and that's our understanding as well. There might be some agencies out there that are at the top end of town that will need full time compliance officers. And it's going to be so embedded in the everyday listing and selling process that you can't get around it. It's something that really has to be thought of. And I think and I get it. If I was an agent today, I'd be going, "Oh, what a nuisance."
Yeah.
But if you can sort of think about it at a more higher level, these things aren't bad things. And it's not only real estate; it's crossing over to other industries. And so I think it's okay. It's safe for us. It's good. It just means more work.
So your 2026 roadmap, where you've got some of those more whole of office solutions that's going to be driving efficiency. What's it going to look like? What's the goal of it?
It's all about efficiency. It's about efficiency.
We love efficiency.
Yeah, it's all about efficiency. It's all about we are where you work. The idea is that we try to make all services and all the processes where we're involved as less complex as possible. And that's obvious, but it's not always the case. Sometimes you roll a product out and you go, this is going to be really helpful, but it adds 2 or 3 times layer of work. So the idea is everything we do in the background. We're a silent partner. We're offering this service. You kind of don't even know it's there, but it's there. Where you will know is sort of the new product suite that we're thinking about will make things more efficient, but it's about the vendor experience as well. Vendors should be able to get things done really, really quickly.
Absolutely.
And the marketing part should be the quickest part of the listing presentation, the quickest part of the whole process. You should be able to get in and get out, with the least amount of clicks, as least invasive as possible, and it should make the most amount of sense.
Yeah, and with the making it easier for the vendor as well. Again, before the podcast, we were talking about some market research on the easiest ways to get leads, and I would hazard a guess that personal recommendations are right up the top. So if you make it as easy as possible for the vendor as well, hey, that might translate into future listings as well.
That's what we call, what is it? Agency of choice.
Yep.
So you become an agency of choice. You've sold a property at market, above market, great. You've sold it in a adequate time frame. You've been able to provide the solutions to make the vendor's whole process seamless. I'm sure you're going to get a call from a friend, a neighbor, from somebody to say, hey, listen, you made that experience really good for them. Got them a great result. We want to see you.
Absolutely.
And I think that goes back a couple of steps to the idea on what's the consensus on marketing. I think that does still play a part in that. I think, hey, you've marketed the property really well. You're a marketing agent and you've done it extremely well. And you've shown how that's, got a result that maybe the person on the road didn't get. And I think that's the viewpoint. My property was the hero of the show, and the agency made it the hero of the show. We love
Absolutely. Now, for those listening to the podcast, if they want to get in touch, how can they reach out?
Head to campaignagent.com.au. If you're at ARIC, we're at ARIC.
Yep.
This weekend we are. But head to the website. If you click the inquire button, chances are you'll get to me, definitely to one of the team.
And that is all we have time for today. Thank you so much for joining us on the podcast, Vinay.
Thank you so much. I really had a great time.
Thank you. That was Vinay Singh, Head of Revenue at CampaignAgent. And that is all we have time for today on the REB Business Empowerment Showcase. But until next time, bye-bye.